Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this additional session, now extending the topic of SPDM. I hope those who attended the previous keynote speech from Mark Norris can now join. So SPDM topic again, but here with concrete presentation of the PIDO and SPDM integration by Gaspard Berthelin, who's application engineer at Data Advance. So please let me first my colleague in more details. So Gaspard is indeed at Data Advance. He graduated from ISAE Supaéro in France with a degree in aerospace engineering and obtained a research master's degree from Supaéro and the University of Paul Sabatier in Toulouse, France. Then he completed a PhD in multidisciplinary optimization, applied to aircraft design at Onera, the famous research center in France, and Supaéro. At the beginning of 2022, he joined Data Advance as application engineer to assist customers from all industries to use P7 product line. So from today is called Integration of Automated Engineering Workflow with SPDM SLM Systems. So with this, Gaspard, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Laurent, and I will begin the presentation. So first of all, let me share my screen. So the idea here is to present an Aras and P7Enterprise integration following a demo scenario for the presentation of an actual demonstration of what Mark Norris did present to us previously. So here is the plan of the demo. So the first main goal will be to show a demonstration of an integration example with Aras Innovator and pSevenEnterprise, where we will try to develop the design process of a turbine disk. So there will be two parts in this demonstration. The first one will be Aras Innovator that will be used at the SPDM platform and who will provide a workflow engine to automatically launch every workflow that will be developed using pSevenEnterprise. And Aras Innovator will also be used to store and version all the data that will be used during a simulation process. And in the other side, pSevenEnterprise will be used as a web-based platform for simulation processes automation. So the idea is to pre-develop an integration of every CAD or tools that will be used, and after that execute these tools using the REST API that is available in pSevenEnterprise. So to show it in another way, so the idea is to use some tools that are already available, like for CAD or CAE. For example, some desktop tools like the one that are here, but also some tools that are on the cloud. And the idea is to wrap them into a simulation workflow to automate and call them very quickly using pSevenEnterprise, and then to use a communication between Aras and pSevenEnterprise to simulate the process of the integration using, first of all, some simulation studies that will be that will allow to define the study that shall be made and to divide them into some simulation tasks that will call some simulation workflow by the help of the task definition that we can see here. The idea will be to use artifact in Aras, which will have two functions. The first one is to allow the communication of some files between the simulation task, and the other one is to automatically collect and push files into the pSevenEnterprise environment. The idea will be to use Aras to develop the life cycle and of the simulation in order to automatically launch every simulation that will be necessary for the SPDM. So here the demo scenario involves this turbine disk, which is a turbine defined by some geometric parameters that are defined right there. And the idea is to perform a structural analysis on this turbine disk, but the properties of this disk can be changed by a temperature field that is previously computing using a thermal analysis. So the idea is to perform a thermal analysis to get a temperature field and then to apply this temperature field into the structure of the rotating disk in order to get some quantities of interest obtained from the structural analysis. So to do so, this simulation task will involve three persons. First one, a simulation administrator, that will be Laurent Check. The idea is to define the simulation study. So he will define every simulation task. He will create every one of them and begin the interaction and set up the interaction between the simulation task. Those two simulation tasks are the thermal one that will be handled by me, Gaspard Batelin, and my job will be to run those simulations, to analyze the results, and to share the results with the structural engineer who will be responsible of the second simulation task concerning the structural analysis. The idea will be to get some key simulation results by performing those two simulations. So what will be necessary to do to achieve this purpose? So for example, for the structural analysis, the idea will be to define some geometric parameters using the Aras platform, to launch, to recover the temperature field file from the previous simulation, to launch automatically the simulation process of the structural analysis. To do so, we will need to communicate the geometric parameters and the temperature file to pSevenEnterprise, to launch the simulation, and then to recover all the information that have been simulated into pSevenEnterprise. So for example, some quantities of interest, like the maximum Van Meter stress or the mass, and also some tools that will be necessary for the analyze of the results, like some files that will be produced by some processing involved in that are coded into the simulation workflow. So now let's go into the demonstration itself. To do so, I will go on a web browser, like for example, Chrome right there, and connect to the Aras Innovator page. I will connect as Laurent checked, the simulation administrator, and I will show you how we can create the task. So I'm logging in. Why? Of course, it doesn't work in live. So here I'm connected as Laurent, And the idea is to create a new simulation study. So to do so, I will go here and create a new study. For example, I will name it Demo Aras P7. I will set up the study manager, which is the run check, add a small objective description, and then I will add the two simulation tasks. The first one will be the thermal one, that, as you recall, will be handled by me. And here is the task definition that need to be chosen. So for the purpose of the demonstration, this task definition has already been developed, and it will ensure the right communication between Aras and the P7 workflow. The other task simulation task will be the structural one, handled by Johan, right there. And yeah, here I made a small mistake. There it is. And for the other one, we will choose the structural one. Here we are, and we create this one. So now we have two simulation tasks, but for now, those tasks are not related, as we can see here. Here we have this a small diagram of the study. We have two simulation tasks that are involved, a structural one and a thermal one, but they are not communicating between themselves. To do so, we need to set up the artifact of the simulation task. So for example, the output artifact of the thermal one is represented by this number. So the ID is to link those two artifacts to link the simulation task. So to do so, we go here and we find that this output artifact needs to be set up as the input artifact of the structural simulation task. So here we can seek for it, we can add it, and now it's done. And if we go back to the study, now we will have in the graph view that the two simulations are linked using this artifact that is represented here. So now let's dig in the simulation task. So for now, there is a task owner, which is me, and we also have tools to analyze the life cycle of the simulation task that is right there. So first of all, a simulation administrator can create this simulation task and then lend it to the owner and it will perform some simulation. If it fails internally, the owner can reiterate the simulation, and when he thinks that it's done, he can pass it in review to the simulation administrator that can release after that. So here, the idea is to pass the ball to the simulation manager, the simulation owner. So to do so, task, and now I will be able to connect as Gaspard Berthelin to show you what is going on this for the simulation side. So I can connect as Gaspard Berthelin, as a new simulation has been created. I have a notification telling me that the simulation 105 is created by Laurent Check. So now I can switch to the simulation task, search for the one that is mine, and I will be able to, first of all, change the parameters of the study. So for example, I will make this change of the input parameters, and when I'm done, I will be able to create an external job. So now it's created. So now there is a new task instance that has been created, and we are being able to run this external job automatically using Aras Innovator. So what it does is use the REST API tools to automatically create a new workflow run into pSevenEnterprise. So for example, here we can refresh the job, and as we can see, a status has been updated and the task has been begun. So now let's switch to pSevenEnterprise, and as we can see, a thermal analysis workflow has been created. So now we can go inside this workflow. So here I can present rapidly what is going on. It's a very simple integration workflow. When here we update the boundary condition of the thermal analysis, here we perform some thermal analysis, and here is some post-processing. The idea here, to recall, is to compute a certain temperature field that will be updated, that will be necessary to perform the structural analysis. So here we can see that the simulation is finished, and we have a new file that has been edited. I added the date of the edition of the file in order to track it. And here we have some some temperature for certain point of the rotating disc that are available through their radial coordinates and their axial coordinates and their associated temperature. So now we can switch back to Aras Simulator. If we refresh the external job, we can see that this one is finished, and we can then fetch the results to get back all the results that were defined in the P7 workflow. So it can be a little bit long, but we will have it right away. So we can get back the maximum temperature obtained on the field, and also in the artifact is stored the temperature field that has been generated by the workflow. So here is the temperature, and if we open it, we can see that it's the same date that at the file that we have shown in pSevenEnterprise. So if the simulation owner is happy with the results, he can now promote it to, as the simulation is completed, he can complete it and pass it into review if he's happy with the outputs of the simulation. So now, if I switch to the simulation administrator, so Laurent check, I will have a notification that the simulation task is finished and that it is in review by Gaspard Bettelin. So now I can go back to the study. Here, this one, go back to the thermal analysis, check out the results, and if I'm happy with the results, I can release it. Then I can switch to the structural analysis, promote it to preliminary to launch the second step of the simulation, which is the structural analysis. So now I will come back as Gaspard Bettelin. Sorry, I need to log in as Joan, which is responsible for the structural analysis. There is a notification that a simulation task is created. And if I go in those simulation tasks, I have a new structural analysis. I can then create an external job and run it as we did on the previous task. And automatically it will, we'll just wait a little that the run is submitted. Now we can see that a new structural analysis is begun. And the interesting thing is that if we go into the structural analysis, into the brands, and we go into the brand directory, we can see that the file has been automatically propagated from Aras to pSevenEnterprise without any action of the simulation owners. So here is the end of the demo because I lost a little bit. I spent a little bit too much time and it's already the end. So I won't share the last thing. So thanks a lot for hearing me, and I will switch back to the accelerant.
Okay, so thanks Gaspar for showing us this presentation and especially the live demo. So this was the last technical presentation of the day, but we have some question on the live feed. So,
of course,
first, how long does it take to create a new task in Aras and link it to a new pSevenEnterprise workflow? And well, I would also add,
yes.
myself, I would add, how long does it take and how complex is it? I think that's also interesting.
I will reshare my screen because I can make a live demo of this. So for example, here we can switch back to Aras Innovator. So I have no rights here. I will switch back to the simulation manager right there. And to create a new task, we go to requirements, administration, process engine. And here we can create a new task definition. So for example, we will create a new example task definition. Here we can choose the execute types. So this is the hard part because it's the one that has been created to define the interaction between pSevenEnterprise and Aras Innovator. And once it's done, it will automatically create 2 inputs and 1 outputs. The inputs here are the P7 app name and the API token that are used to set up the communication with pSevenEnterprise. And now we would have to add some inputs to be sure that we are telling to pSevenEnterprise, like for example, if there is an input named X in the P7 workflow, we should have an input named X and set up the communication to send it automatically. So it's quite complex because it requires to know exactly how Aras and pSevenEnterprise works, but it can be done in 10 minutes for a new P7 workflow.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that covers the question. Next one says, what if I need to execute some applications which are not part of my HPC cluster? Can pSevenEnterprise execute applications on a specific machine?
Yes, so this has already been presented by Anton, but in every workflow, we can set up where we can execute every workflow. So for example, if I click on this block, I can determine which host it will be run on. So for example, in any host available, it will automatically go into a Linux host. But if I can also add another external node, for example, a Windows node here, which is named P7 Online Excel. And now this block will be executed on this external node. So we just have to set up the communication between pSevenEnterprise and this external node.
Okay. And last one, because we will let people move to the conclusion of the day. So you talked about the REST API for pSevenEnterprise. How does it work? Well, I think you can do a simple explanation because that could be very long.
Yeah, so REST API is just a way of communicating with pSevenEnterprise. So the idea is that every workflow and is listed into an URL that can be accessed using, for example, a web browser. And if I can go into any of this workflow, and we can see that we can recover the name, the ID, etc. And once we are there, we can also see which are the parameters. And if you want to communicate with it, we can change the parameters and everything that is needed directly using this REST API. So,
okay, yeah, I think that covers basic usage of
yes.
the API. Well, so yeah, that's the end of the technical presentations. So now there's the wrap up of the conference, which is done by Laurent Scheck. So yes, I will let you switch to this last session, and we will stop the broadcast here. So just for information, these sessions are being recorded, so they will be accessible later on the platform. So thanks for your attention, and bye to everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gaspar.
Thanks, Joel.